Hey everybody, sorry for the short delay there, a couple minutes late on starting, but welcome to another White Cloaks live stream. And we're here. You know what? Here, let's move these around a little bit. We'll throw Alex. You can stay in the middle, and we're gonna do this. Oh, come on! There we go. Bam. Now Alex Green. The he's a good looking guy. We'll leave him on the top. We got our co-host and guest for today, Amanda Manethra and Daniel. We just finished up watching the first half of Fellowship of the Ring, basically up to the end of book 1 in the actual book, The Fellowship of the Ring. And what are you guys' initial reactions? Let's go first to Daniel. Thanks, by the way, for being here. If you guys don't know, Daniel's got his own YouTube channel. You guys should absolutely go check him out. I think I put a link to your channel in the description for this video, but if you want to drop one in chat, I can do that as well. So, yeah, how did you feel about it? How long has it been since you watched it before?
It's been years, and I loved seeing it again. My gosh, it holds up 100%, and it's still just as amazing, and it brings out the emotions, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's an example everyone should still be using.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Nate, what about you?
I could watch this 2 times a year if I needed to. But it's probably been about a year since I've watched it, and so just sitting down and just every time that movie opens up and you hear that Elvish speak coming from Galadriel, you're just kind of like, oh, my heart is warming up. I feel like I'm home, type of thing, And it just it's from an era bygone of good filmmaking, real care into what they produce in cinema, and it's just a joy to go back every time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you guys a little connection that I got with the movies. So we were just reminiscing about when these came out, and they came out around the Christmas season in 01, 02, and 03. And I recall going to see those in theaters right around the university break at end of December. And then especially in 02 and then 03, you had the DVD and you watched kind of, all right, I'm going to catch up. I'm going to see this DVD extended edition. I'm going to watch it. Then I'm going to go to the theaters that afternoon. And for some reason in my family, it just kind of stuck as like a holiday thing that around Christmas time, when you have like a dead day, nothing going on, you sit, you watch Lord of the Rings. You try and get through the whole trilogy over the Christmas break. So that's the last time I saw it. It was basically a month ago, month and a half ago around the Christmas season. So
I have a quick question. Does everyone remember how many times they saw it in the theater? Because I know I saw it at least 3 on each of these.
I saw them more than once, but I'll be the first to admit that when the DVD box set came out that had almost like an extra hour of footage, it seemed, and I liked especially Fellowship so much more for the extra stuff that was put in. I came out of the theaters, Two Towers, Return of the King, similarly excited for the DVD box set, and when that's coming out in half a year, because there's presumably another 45 minutes or so of movie that I want to see. So maybe as a result of that, I didn't go to the theatrical release too much. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I probably saw it a couple times, but it wasn't. I wasn't huge into going to the movies a lot. I kind of reserved those for big event type things, especially these days, which means there's no movies I go to.
Yeah. I think I probably only saw it twice in the movies. I remember, I went with my brothers like opening night for this movie, and then I think I saw it again with. I want to say I saw it again with my girlfriend at the time, and I think that was my kind of experience watching these in the theaters. I'll say I don't think I've ever really had the experience of like going and seeing one movie like repeatedly in the movie theaters. I just don't think I've ever done that. So even seeing Fellowship of the Ring twice, I think was probably an exception for me. I know there's some people.
Can I anticipate Alex's answer to this?
Yeah,
go for it.
I think Alex is going to say the movie was rated 14A, so I couldn't see it in theater.
Don't be ridiculous. It's PG-13 in America. There's no such thing as 14A.
I was going to say, first of all, 14A is ridiculous Canadian speak. Can we just talk for just saying the fact that it's actually PG-13 is a little bit surprising.
Come on.
Like the movie made a choice to...
There's a head that comes off. In
what I was saying.
Do you think it should be hard R?
What I was saying, it's unsurprising. Well, no,
it can't be PG.
It's unsurprising that they wouldn't make it R because of movies trying to make film industry. They're not gonna make the movies R rated because anything that's R rated ends up making less money in movies called Deadpool. So it's just, it's a challenge from that perspective, but it's still a little bit surprising. Look, that like they clearly made the choice to make the movie than the book, The Fellowship, which had a lot of elements from kind of The Hobbit and, his earlier narratives where it's, we talked about it before, like the books are really, really charming. They have this sort of, just kind of, I don't know, child-friendly, kind of aspect to them. And the movies cut a lot of that and went with a more serious, darker tone.
But I do want to
quickly... I don't know. I was a little bit surprised.
Was I wrong, Alex?
My recollection.
Did you watch the films in theaters, or were you too young at the time?
Both. I was both too young at the time, and my father felt that it was a culturally significant enough moment to make an exception. So, yes, there was
awesome.
There was
that is good parenting.
Yeah, like perfect answer.
Second grade at midnight in a theater full of 40-year-olds. Like, hi everybody.
The reason I asked was back then, I was always in love with going to the movie theater, and obviously that's changed for all of us in the past few years. But back in those days, any reason to go see, especially something like this, multiple times, because the movie theater used to have a magical quality to it. And you get a magical movie like this, and it's just, it's perfect.
Yeah. I think the greatest thing about going to these movies is I come from a rather large family, having 4 siblings, and at the time, both my older sisters were married, and my brother was dating somebody, I think. I don't know. Either way, it was like we took up an entire row as a family in the movie theater. And so each year, we would get there at the opening day, and we'd want to get into the seating line early enough so that we could take up that front row right in front of that space before the front section. And so we had to make sure that we were those assholes fighting for them. And of course, my mom would be slowly walking in and be like, "Don't, guys, we can sit anywhere. It's fine." And we're like, no. And then my brother-in-law at the end of the first movie looking,
"Shut up, Mom, that's stupid."
Going, right. And then my brother-in-law, not having read the books, at the end of the first movie, when it ends, as they're making their way across the river and heading into Mordor area, looks at me and he goes, "Wait, what? That's it?" And I'm just sitting there smiling at him. Yep, that's it.
Oh, nice. Hey, okay, this is probably a good time. We'll try and bring in some people who are here in the chat. Which, first of all, leave a comment in the chat. You know, how many times did you see this movie in the theaters? But we had, looks like Lady Balefire showed up for just a second, and then we have Jacob Ironsides is here. Yeah, James Knight. We have Sven, and Nerdporeal Lifeform showed up. Nice. And is surprised to see, yep, Daniel. He's a real person.
He's not an AI. He's not a chatbot.
Kalia Dare is here. Let's see. Have anybody that I missed? If we have somebody else, here we go. Trip showed up. Doesn't want me to yell at her, so I better highlight her comments so she doesn't get mad here. Okay, I think that's everybody that we got currently here. So thank you guys for showing up. Hopefully, at least some of you guys watched the movie with us. I thought it was a lot of fun in the Discord. The chat was lively.
Discord chat was great.
So that was a good experience. Yes, yeah. So many good comments. All right, so how do we want to do this here? We other than waiting for the chat to tell us how many times they watched in the theaters, we can just kind of shoot from the hip and have a conversation about it, or
Right.
I can pull up the movie and we can do the scene and just kind of march through it. What do you guys think?
I think we should go chronologically through it, and at the same time, I don't know if you need to pull up any visuals because it should be pretty fresh in all of our memories, and I don't want to get in copyright trouble. Like,
I wouldn't play the movie.
Okay.
I just basically freeze frame it and have it brought up, and we could talk through it. So that's one option. I don't know. Chat can weigh in on this as well if you guys have some thoughts on how you want us to go through it. We did have some pretty good discussions. I think the biggest discussions we had were just like the types of cuts that were made. So Daniel, I think the rest of us have talked a fair amount about this on our streams going through the books. So maybe that's what we start with. Since you haven't been on with us through the books yet, how do you feel about the cuts that were made for the movie? Because clearly the biggest cuts, I think, in the whole series of movies really happened in the first half of the Fellowship of the Ring.
It really did. And I love to listen, especially to the audiobooks quite often. So I really love when they meet Tom Bombadil and Old Man Willow and the Barrow Wraiths.
Yeah.
So I understand why it was cut, and I don't have a problem with it. I wish that there was a way. I think the biggest sin I have with it is when they meet up with Merry and Pippin, and we lose the entire what's the word I'm thinking about?
conspiracy.
Conspiracy. Yes, the conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I really miss that because that gives us just a really fantastic tying together of the friendship of all of these. And we, of course, lose Fatty Bulger, who is the unsung hero. And so that really elevates our four hobbits, our five hobbits, actually, but it elevates them so much more. We get that later. We won't discuss that now, but it just makes it a clumsy, entryway. But at the same time, I was for some reason thinking of the movie Goonies, and how when you have a movie, you just can't do what you do in a book, and you can't build up so much information like this because it takes too much time. And so just throwing our four characters together. Anyways, I'm cutting too far ahead.
Now, I have an idea, and I want to bounce this off you guys, and it just kind of came to me. But so I understand why they did what they did, because they had to accelerate Frodo leaving the Shire in the film. You can't have him hanging around there for 17 years, and you can't have it being the result of, a carefully detailed plan. But what ultimately happens in the movie is Sam is still at least there trimming the hedges or whatever, and he gets kind of drawn into it. Could there have been a way in the film to have drawn Fatty and Merry and Pippin and Sam in there as well?
Not fatty, I don't think.
And the way I would do this, and this is just spitballing it out here, but instead of Frodo stumbling home and then Gandalf already being in there, what if Gandalf barges into Bag End and starts having this conversation with Frodo, not realizing that Frodo has dinner guests who overhear what's going on. And maybe at the table there is Fatty, Merry, Pippin, and Sam. And all of a sudden they hear too much and they kind of get drawn into it. And then they step up and say, no, you know what we're going to do is we're going to come with you, Mr. Frodo. We're all in this, all for one for all, kind of a Three Musketeers thing. And Fatty, if he needs to be the one that stays, is like, well, I'll stay here at Bag End and hold down the fort, make sure those Sackville Bagginses don't take everything.
You know what I would have done? I would have had, when Gandalf reaches out the window and picks up Sam squeaks something like, if I don't report back, they'll know I'm missing or something. And then they go, report back to who? And then he leads them to Merry and Pippin. Something like that could have worked.
I kind of feel like it should have just been more than Sam under the window. Like like if you really wanted to cut out the whole thing of the conspiracy, it should have been that, like, maybe Sam was, trimming the hedges. Like, I like that they used the dialogue from that, but they should have run into them sometime between grabbing Sam from the window. And if they're going to have that scene where, like, Gandalf is walking with the two of them out of the Shire, and then he separates off and all the birds flock around and you get the, like, Gandalf's gone. Like, now we're in danger, somewhere in that sequence of time, they should have run into Merry and Pippin and Gandalf been like, nope, you've heard too much. Now like, you're involved as well. I don't know. I feel like that the running into them late just seems a little weird,
It's just the one thing that I really dislike, because it's coincidence. And when you can remove coincidence from a story, it just makes it so much more powerful. And it just makes it into this, just Merry and Pippin, or just any two other hobbits they would have run into would be part of our company. And that's not how this story works at all.
That's a good point. That it doesn't have the friendship, which I think Alex brought up on our stream before, right? Talking about the importance of the conspiracy and the fact that it's his friends, right?
Yeah, because again, and this is what I was just thinking. It's fun that we can actually have a nitpick like this, and this is actually the true old way you would nitpick something you actually love, versus anything modern current day that we would talk about and just rip to pieces. So I still love the movie. Obviously, that's
a good point. We're sitting here picking the sort of like the one fly out of your soup, whereas now you're picking the corn out of the sort of baby corn crunch.
Yes, exactly. You're right.
You're trying to salvage the one piece that's still maybe edible, that might still have some nutritional value left in it.
On a side note of that, Pips, I had to watch that South Park episode again to look at the poop swatches to see if there was maybe one that I missed, because we had classic brown, baby green nut, and corn crunch. There was one that's not mentioned audibly, but is in the swatch, and it's the Hangover Black.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I just want to bring up, so Nerdporial says that he watched it once in theaters. Jacob Ironside says he saw the first one. Wasn't able to see the third one in theaters. That is unfortunate.
Ouch.
And then we have the question here from eman357 asking if the extended edition was released in theaters. To my knowledge, no.
No.
Which, to be honest, I think we've talked about this before, like, talking about old franchises that exist. If New Line Cinema wanted to just like shut up and print more money, re-release the Lord of the Rings movies in theater, like in the middle of COVID lockdowns. If they had just released the extended edition in theaters, they could have just, Money Machine goes burr, right? Like,
no, because you couldn't.
Where I was at, you could.
You can't go to theaters in COVID lockdown, dude. That was
during the. Okay, in America we could, because we didn't actually really lock down.
Wait, what? You guys could go into fucking movie theaters?
Yeah, we just told you had to be 6 feet apart and you had to wear your mask, and then you could take the mask off as soon as the lights were turned off.
They would close off every other row,
and
then
not
they
New
would
York,
block
Chicago,
off,
LA.
like, 2 seats.
Yeah,
parts of America were still semi-normal-ish.
Yeah.
But then after a little while it
Dane-
passed, you could just go.
Dane is having one of those window-shattering moments where he's just realizing the rest of the world is not as insane as Trudeau land.
We're all in this together.
Right?
Something like that.
But you're so right. Even
Um,
if you do the extended editions, that you put an intermission, you have people in the theater even
Yeah.
longer, and you make even more money on concessions.
Yes.
It's so stupid
Yep.
how much money they could have
It's
earned.
it's
But,
like Star Wars not re-releasing Knights of the Old Republic with like a 4K HD skin. It's like you just hate money. That's the only explanation for why you haven't done it.
Okay, to which I'm going to say, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I saw all 3 of them extended editions in theaters twice during COVID. So this definitely was a
what?
thing that happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's organized on a on a production company level. I think it's
You just have a
organized
local theater
in
that's
theaters.
cool.
Yeah.
I think it was all of them in Pennsylvania, with the exception of maybe a couple in Philadelphia that were still sort of communist, did this. At least as far as I know. Maybe.
Nice. Yeah, and I'd heard of that more recently. I had
Pennsylvania.
not. I don't think like New Line went out and sit there and said, "Hey, let's do this wide release across the country." It's more like I heard about it in situations like going to, if you went to New York and this theater would have it, or this theater in Chicago or whatever, in bigger places where, otherwise it was, hey, this group of people rented out the movie theater and they're showing they rented out all day and they're going to show these movies and you can come and see them.
Yeah. I think
It wasn't an
Gadfly
indie theater. It
Fiction's
was
point here.
fucking Marcus Majestic.
That honestly, I've never heard. Maybe that's a Pennsylvania movie theater brand. I mean, if you were like, "Hey, it was the AMC," then I'd be like, first of all, I don't believe you. They were out of business during that time period. Second of all,
Marcus is the
No, come on,
second biggest movie theater chain in the country. Are you fucking with me?
They got fucking AMC got recapped by Reddit. Stock went to the moon, bud.
It's true. True.
At least know that much.
All right.
COVID.
Okay. Do we want to dive in this? We'll go in chronological kind of order here.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll let's see how I can run this. All right. Right there, rated PG-13. Let's do. I don't know. That looks fine.
See, and now if this was released
We'll be
today,
over here
it would be PG-13 for violence and smoking.
Yeah.
Good point.
But not for
Fucking
language
Nazis.
though. They did remove the quintessential Tolkien language. I brought this up that I think this might be the first time that the White Cloaks might be on record saying that we wanted more queer representation. We wanted to hear the word queer used far more. Sorry, we're getting canceled.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great joke.
Was there
You guys
actually
all-
a
Grab
scene
that
where they
bundle
actually
of
were
sticks.
carrying a bundle of sticks? That's how you would kind of do it. Kind of, if you just wanted to do a dig at it, is just have the hobbits carrying an inordinate amount of bundles of sticks in their hands.
Soon they're going to ban that. They're going to say you're not allowed to carry bundles of sticks because we know what you're really trying to say.
You're trying to make us think the word. All right, here we go. We get this is just the initial credits here. All right, 3 were given to elves, right? So we're getting the
Yeah, because now
the best prologue
when I
ever put to film.
when I read the books,
Yeah.
I skipped
Yeah.
over all of the poems because that's apparently what everyone does. So I have no idea where this shit came from. What the hell are these rings about?
Man, I was still blown away when someone was saying that was a thing that people have said
Yeah.
about this series. Like, yeah, just don't read the poems. Like, what?
Yeah, no, I did. I mea culpa, like right out of the gate. I was like, poem first page, skip that. Obviously not important.
Dane is speaking the truth. It's a truth none of us want to admit, but like especially when you're younger, upon first reading, you're just like, I just get through these poems. But I love them now. The poems are beautiful.
Maybe
So
that's
this is-
fair.
this is
it
where-
depends on how old you were when you first read it, obviously, and then the length of the poems. And then after maybe reading through 2 or 3 of them and then realizing it didn't really impact the plot too much.
This is where you said that Mount Doom was moved on the map, right?
Well, this is what's interesting when you look at the map here is I don't think it's moved on the map because you see Mount Doom and then you see what looks like Barad-dûr to the right.
Yeah. Yep.
But
That
later on in the film, because you have Barad-dûr with the Eye of Sauron. This is a spoiler for Return of the King, but they're looking at the Black Gates, which are in the top left corner. And then when the ring is destroyed, like the Eye of Sauron almost does a 180 to kind of look back at Mount Doom. But in the one shot that we get of Mordor when the ring wraiths are leaving, I want to be clear if maybe they swapped the positions of the two.
I don't think they swapped the positions. They moved Barad-dûr significantly to the west to move it closer to the gap of Mordor, such that there wasn't like an awkward 2-week ride from the gap to Barad-dûr is what they did. And if you look at it, if they moved it, significantly west, that explains much of the pivot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going here. So yeah, I mean, the amazing prologue, right? The prologue itself here was mostly stuff snipped from other places in the story, right? So right here, this is the fight of the the what is it? The Last Alliance, right?
So I'll have to say right here, when I first saw this, I got really excited that this was going to be a great movie because this was a new addition. Because I was expecting, all right, concerning hobbits, and it's just going to start taking off. But when it started adding new things, and especially showing details or ways that this was done, like the cutting of the ring, for example, if you just stuck to the story and didn't dive into the appendices or what, I never really got a good visual of how that was done. And I had always kind of imagined a defeated Sauron and Isildur taking his finger and fucking hacking it off. And then the ring is mine, biatch, see you later. Seeing it in the context of a battle like this, I don't know if that's canonical.
It is not.
Okay. But I was impressed with the way that it was all done. So it really stoked my imagination, really got me excited to see the rest of the film. That one charge of the orcs coming up and all the elves with their fucking curved hack swords just going in sequence. I thought it was beautiful. I was so excited to see it. A massive Sauron who's like a mech, basically going through and smashing people here. I was like,
the amount of production in this initial prologue is an entire movie's worth of production and storytelling. And to do that much effort and writing and casting and costuming and narration and all that, to do how long is a prologue? A few minutes, 4 minutes, 8. Like the actual
we're
battle?
almost done with it now.
It's like
we're almost done with it right now, and we're at 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
The battle part is 5. The Smeagol part is 3.
So just with the battle and all of that alone, you've got an entire movie's level of production for 5 minutes. The restraint to do that and to give you so much that you want more, and it's genius because not many artists and directors will be able to restrain themselves enough to do that, right? Because they always want to tell a bigger story and do like a half an hour prologue or something. And so it's the prologue to, like, again, it's why this movie becomes something that you grade other movies by.
So I disagree with your read on that entirely. I don't think there was anything restrained about this. I mean, Peter Jackson threw the entire population of New Zealand at this prologue, like quite literally.
I don't mean that. I mean restrained in time. Like he's condensing this to a 5-minute period of time instead of doing a 20-minute long prologue, which easily could have been done here.
Time
he doesn't give Elrond a speech, right? You see him like shout something and an arrow whip past his head, but that's a beautiful, subtle little thing that you see him later, right? But don't hang a lantern.
Cool guys don't look at arrows going by their head. We see that again with Aragorn.
This whole thing would have been spoken of in today's stuff to save money. It wouldn't be a show type of thing. It's you tell, don't show in today's versions.
I mean, look no further than Wheel of Time, where they literally the first 4 lines are copied from this almost exactly. I mean, and it's literally telling about the breaking of the world, and instead of showing the breaking of the world, Moraine's getting dressed.
They show Moraine, putting on her house robe. She's putting on her house coat.
Does this go with this?
And she's taking on and off her ring.
Show me less.
I need a knife. Ching.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! You're gonna trigger us if you keep that up.
Where's my Super Bowl ring?
I'm just gonna say I paused it here because this was I brought this up. I was like, yep, my first nitpick, and really a nitpick, right? Like this is the difference between this, kind of talking about a movie that you actually love and enjoy versus something else. The first thing I thought of was like, man, they kind of screwed something up here. Here's a guy in like partial plate and like a full chainmail shirt who's like swimming / floating on top of the water as the ring kind of, falls off his finger. And I was like, no, he would be sinking to the bottom and drowning, like, but it's a great shot. Like it works so well to do the betrayal of the ring where he's like swimming and the ring falls off his finger and he's having to reach, but the ring is falling away from him. Right. And so the only way to do that shot is like, so the only way to do this shot is like the ring has to sink and he can't, he's floating, he's positively buoyant. He can't go after the ring and the ring ends up going, down into the river and getting, sort of carried away. Right. So like, I get why they had to do it. And yet like, that's the level of nitpicks you have to be. We're like, hey, remember that 5-second clip where physics didn't work properly? Like,
1 out of 10.
They had to do this
really
he didn't have to be wearing armor in this part of it, right? So they show him afterwards.
They could have had him
in a more kingly costume, like give him a king's robes or whatnot, but not necessarily in armor. And maybe honestly, that could have worked. In that's why he decided to flee instead of fight, right? He wanted to get the fuck out of there because he wasn't in armor. He wasn't off, kind of fully mailed up and whatnot. So
very, very good point. Yeah, if he had just had that kind of circle with the tree,
we're gonna have
the ring around his neck. Yeah.
Fuck these movies. We're gonna have to start all over again, redo them, recast. Let's get it all and let's do it right this time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. White Cloak's rewatch of Lord of the Rings.
So terrible.
Jacob Ironside is
tear it apart.
It's Numenorian armor. Everybody knows Numenorian armor floats. The sea is always right, guys.
Is that because the sea is always right?
No, it's because Numenorian armor looks up, you dipshits.
Well,
3D printing is buoyant.
In the books, Isildur has it for like 5 years before he actually gets killed. He doesn't lose it right away.
And it just falls off his finger, if I remember the books correctly. He doesn't lose it as getting a shot. He loses it, and then he gets shot.
Yeah. He gets ambushed by orcs, I believe. But it's not like coming home from the battle. It's...
He puts it on to escape. It gets sucked in the water. He loses it, and then gets out of the water and gets shot.
So I was already familiar with setting in place. So I kind of knew that Isildur's going to lose the ring farther up the Anduin because that's where the Smeagol's village is. So I knew that there's a bit of a time gap. But you're right. If you're not familiar with it, you kind of think exactly from this that it's immediately post battle, and he's going back to his castle, and that's when he gets killed. But Alex is completely right. There's years and years, but I don't know. The film kind of implies that Isildur had the ring for a while because Gandalf goes and reads a scroll about it, right? An account of his interaction with the ring. So maybe a bigger costume change could have solved both those things, right? Isildur now is king, riding on a horse with a big crown. Give him a velvet robe with furs and whatnot, but not fully armored, and
just change his hair, give him some gray hair.
Yeah,
and shave his beard off or something like that. You could have done it, but
I think there's ways you could have done it, but again, I mean, we're having to like sit here, armchair quarterback on like the extra 2%. It's like, I can't believe you turned in this homework assignment and accepted a 97.5%. Like what? Hey, if you don't, I mean, why are you even doing your work, right? Okay, so unfortunately, guys, as is tradition,
I think Pips is trying to tell us that his internet sucks.
Internet has decided to.
Didn't we learn last time that Alex was supposed to
all of a sudden my bandwidth goes from like. That is true, Alex. Why don't you pull up? You pull up yours, and we can do it from there. Now, I think we'll just forego the kind of scroll ahead shot. The intro, which I think everybody.
Hey Pips, you should probably stop your video just for the bandwidth.
Sort of cold open intros, what are we going to call it?
Do you want to go to the retarded horse face? Thanks.
There it is.
Maybe this helps.
So I guess if we go to the prologue, we go to Gollum's cave. I think Gollum's cave. We generally all pretty much say, you know what? Yep, that was well done. Like, love it, big fan.
Yep.
Then we go to the Shire, and in the theatrical edition, they do not have concerning hobbits.
Yeah,
I can see why they don't have it in the theatrical version. However, in the extended edition, I really like it.
There are elements of concerning hobbits because I think it starts.
Don't tell me how to live my life, Trip.
At least turn the volume down.
Sorry.
But that's why you don't see where his hands are. Oh, man. Okay.
Oh, dear God.
Wait, were you clapping or were you jacking it? Don't answer.
Clapping, another word for that?
He was hoofing it.
Yes.
That's another word for it. All right, so in the theatrical, if I recall correctly, double IRC, Gandalf shows up, and you get a lot of the Frodo Gandalf interaction. So you get some of that fun stuff, including the surly looking hobbit, the kids who want the fireworks go off, the surly man like laughs, and then his wife scowls at him, and then he scowls again. Like, that was always a great little sequence.
I love
what you don't get the Bilbo narration or the voiceover with the book, and you don't get a lot of the additional shots of Bag End. But fuck,
I love seeing Frodo leap onto the wagon with Gandalf, because the size comparison is fantastic. The way they do the perspective, or however they do that.
That's the one forced perspective shot that I always thought was a little bit jarring to me visually, because I watched the appendices afterwards and how they did all this stuff. But that's one where you can definitely tell, okay, that's Elijah Wood, and he's hopping on. And just for a moment there, Frodo seems to grow a little bit bigger than he should.
I
mean, it's a pretty dynamic shot.
I don't catch it. So
okay. I'm the only.
I mean, just doing forced perspective works a lot better when at least one of the members of the shot is completely stationary, and when there's not a whole lot of dynamic motion, right? Because it's one of the things like we have monocular and binocular sort of distance and size estimation cues when you talk about our vision. And so when something is in motion, that cues a monocular sort of distance cue. So you're able to see, even in a forced perspective environment, you're able to judge things size and distance much better based on rate of motion. So like you
Look,
can tell that the bench is long and he's moving. You know what I mean?
So what I'm saying with that shot, it just because it ends in a hug and you have Elijah Wood and Ian McKellen hugging each other, they look like, oh, here we've got a 6 foot tall guy and we've got a 5'2" guy, just for that kind of brief instance. But when you get back to doing all of the tricks that they use, and you can see that there's a bigger size difference implied. That shot out of all of them, I think, is the one that undermines the forced perspective the most, or the size differences. But I don't see a way around it, because if it was CGI or if they used a body double or any other thing, you probably would have caught it and it would have even looked worse.
Trip has a question for you here. If you can just answer that question.
Just wait till I tell you about Way of Kings, because I finished reading that fucking brick of a book and oh my god.
The reason I brought that up in the first place was I liked the forced perspective. I like seeing the size, but there's a reason for the shot, because we get to see the childlike nature of hobbits, and especially Frodo and Gandalf's closeness, and the way Gandalf obviously loves coming to the Shire and how he feels about hobbits, and especially Bilbo and Frodo. And so it's in service of a point in the story. So it's great storytelling. It's visual tools in storytelling, which is what they should be doing. So, yeah.
I think we can all agree if it was made today, Gandalf would have had moon boots on, and that would have been the extent of...
Yes, the big clumpy moon boots.
Oh, fuck you,
and he would just go clonk, clonk.
And give him a blonde wig. I like oddities. No, but honestly, the best forced perspective shot that I'll say is actually a little bit later, when Frodo and Gandalf are sitting over the table in Bag End and talking to each other, other opposite sides of the table. And then when you see how they filmed it, when there's like 2 different sets of dishes, and that they jury-rigged the table on some type of moving thing so that they can pan the camera across. And you go back, like you watch the appendices, you see how they filmed it and the motion involved. And then you go back and you look at the shot and you don't see the table move or anything like that. You've got a big-ass Gandalf and you've got a small-ass Frodo, and they're looking eye to eye. And you're swearing, there's no way, this has to be a CGI shot. No, it was all done forced perspective. And it's just mind-bogglingly good filmmaking is what that is. And that's where I'll leave it. It's basically, if they have to hug at the end of it, you're going to undermine use of forced perspective.
Yeah.
But regular forced perspective, you can't move the camera unless you do something really clever, which is what they did with that table shot.
Which I think is something that a lot of us commented on as we watched this. There's a lot of scenes where they did things very clever with the shots, right? So jumping ahead just slightly, the shot of the ring falling and the fact that it doesn't bounce, that it just lands like bam, and it just sits there motionless as it fell onto the ground. As I
think they did that with a magnet.
Yeah. The shot of Gandalf looking down at the ring, and sort of like the fisheye kind of lens of the overhead shot of looking down, you very much get the perspective that the ring is actually watching Gandalf, and then him touching it and him getting the brief flash of that sort of premonition, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that they did that were just very interesting and well done.
You just pointed out something amazing, Pips, which is Peter Jackson gave the ring character. An inanimate object has character in this movie many times.
Far more character than Galadriel had in Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I come back to that comment.
It's because it's a gold ring and not a plank of wood, you know.
Pippin?
It's higher up on the inanimate.
my favorite line from In Bruges: "It's an inanimate fucking object. You're an inanimate fucking object."
Oh man,
that movie should have won an Oscar.
No, everyone talks about how in so many new shows, that if they're wearing a helmet, they can't emote, they can't act or whatever. We have a ring that can't move or bend or do anything, and yet it has personality. And yeah,
Well, it can glow with words on it. So, the ability to speak does not make one. Wait, sorry.
For anyone who doubts me about that Galadriel dig, there's a reason why I did it. And this is Moifred Clark Galadriel is basically look at her facial expression throughout everything that happens in the series. Aside from the one time she's riding a horse and smiling, she's got the same fucking face on everything. Pips is 100% right.
Yeah.
What cracks me up about Galadriel
pointing out, though, we did say no Rings of Power references.
That was during the film. We're allowed to do it here.
Right. Morfydd Clark is the anti-parent. She doesn't open her mouth. Like, even when she talks, she has her teeth closed. Like, it's bizarre.
That's why her relationship with not Sauron was never going to work.
Well, she doesn't open her mouth because she's fighting the patriarchy.
Alex, you need to do a cut of Morfydd Clark and parents speaking to one another and just having, that would be great.
Guys, are we gonna have to do a rewatch of Rings of Power and then come up with jokes like "open your mouth"?
I don't think. I mean,
that's straight up canceling worthy right there.
We'd still be working on that when season 2 comes out, and then our livers wouldn't have any chance to recover. All of us would die.
I don't think this is gonna drive us to insanity as much as Wheel of Time because it was so over the top bad. I don't know. You guys heard it here first. We might rewatch Rings of Power because nobody is right. It's the same thing with Wheel.
If Dane can knock Alex and I unconscious and tie us to our chairs long enough to force us to do
it's gonna be Clockwork Orange. You guys are gonna have your eyes open up, and I'll be there with fucking bottles of Visine. Anyways, sorry.
All right, let's keep moving on. So Alex, you pointed out that the concerning hobbits that came after the prologue was not in the theatrical release, which I actually really appreciate you pointing out. I haven't seen the theatrical release of this since the first and I suppose second time since I watched this. I've only ever watched the extended since then. It's really hard to kind of remember like what the actual theatrical release is. And I mean, does anyone actually watch the theatrical release of this anymore? Like anybody in the chat, when you're like, I'm going to watch Lord of the Rings, are you ever like, I'm going to save the extra 45 minutes and I'm going to watch the theatrical release?
So the only time that it ever happens is if like you're watching sports, like you got the noon NFL game on, it's 3:00, that game ends, the 4:30 game is shit, it's like the Cowboys or something, and then for whatever reason they always have the Lord of the Rings on TNT, and I don't know who did it, but they have cut it so that as soon as the noon game ends, it always cuts to Osgiliath with Frodo talking to Faramir. And like this has happened to me like 7 times, and I don't know why they do it, but I always see Frodo about to get eaten by the Nazgul.
Wow.
That's the only time I ever see the theatrical edition, and it's a very specific time.
Yeah. In the extended editions that Dane's got right there, they have a little pamphlet in there that marks the chapters on which scenes have been extended and which scenes were added as part of the release. And so whenever I've watched them, whenever I've watched the extended editions, I tend to have that out on the side just to remind myself which scenes had stuff enhanced by the extended editions.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
What's in there? Set. If you can get to it, there's little asterisks beside the scenes, and if they're a new scene, as is where I think he's going, they'll designate. Okay, got a new scene there, so you can follow along. Yep. So it's like concerning hobbits is a new scene.
So, even though I have
Dragon, that's a new scene as well. But
yeah, even though I have this 4K edition, I have that same edition that he has. I will never get rid of that because of those little things in there. It's just
the goodies set are wonderful.
So the cases are sexy.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
It's got a map, and it's got kind of the trail of where the characters all go through.
Yeah.
on the inside flap. There's 2 DVDs of appendices, which is where kind of all the behind the scenes stuff comes from. And I still remember kind of diving through that. And when you had all 3 of them, it'd take you like a day to watch all of the appendices to how these films were made.
Back.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
All right, back
earlier
on
movies- your
back
earlier
on the
question
actual
was-
topic at hand here. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No,
what's up,
the only
Daniel?
reason to watch the original theatrical is if, like Alex said, it just happens to be on TV. I can't imagine anyone purposefully watching the theatrical.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so we have Concerning Hobbits, and then it goes into a long expected party is where it goes into, right? And we have a couple scenes in there with we commented about this. Gandalf shows up. Frodo like sort of weirdly doesn't like expect Gandalf in their first meeting, which is a little strange, right? But then you have, they're talking. Frodo is hilariously hunting around his place for food and like, hey, do you? Nathan is just making E-Man 357 just be jealous as hell over here.
Those bookends?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep,
The figures
bookend
that-
Argonath that came with the extended edition, special edition back in the day. And then this came with 2 towers. These are all
Creepy.
Weta Workshop. And then this was Return of the King.
Ah.
Nice. What's inside it there?
Keep your leaf in
It's a
there.
white tree. No, that's where he hides his tobacco.
Yeah, that's what
I was going to say, is that your tobacco boxes? Yeah.
They call it
Um,
leaf in Lord of the
Oh.
Rings. After that,
Or your weed.
Yeah.
Long
Old
bottle
Toby.
leaf. Yeah, exactly.
or weed. Yeah.
All right, so there's the scene there where the Sackville Baggins show up, those SOBs, and Bilbo does a pretty good effort at hiding from them, pretty hilariously. And then we see that again at the party, right? Long expected party. We see him trying to run away from him. This is another spot where I was like, oh, the conspiracy could have been subtly hinted at here, right? If Bilbo at the party had been like, oh, the Sackville Bagginses, and had like tried to kind of hide around the corner. In the movie, he ends up hiding with Frodo and talks to him about how, you're the only Baggins that showed any spirit and all this kind of stuff, right? But it could have been right there. He could have put the ring on for just a second to dodge the SOBs, and you could have had a quick shot over to Mary, who could have seen Bilbo put the ring on, and then they could have not mentioned it again or whatever, but that could have been a quick nod to the fact that Mary actually was the only Hobbit to know about the ring without being told about it. But again, these are really like tiny little corner cases that as you're watching the movie, you're like, they could have used the same couple seconds for this scene a little differently. But it's a great scene though, right? Like anyone.
All I gotta say is Alex better be hauling up some pretty fucking awesome book porn. All the sound going on right now. But if he just turned off his camera to clean up.
He was pulling out all of his old original Playboys.
No, so
I got those.
in Wheel of Time how Loyal is terrified of his mother and is like trying to avoid her.
Yes.
Like
That's
that is
9
literally
books.
my exact situation. I am my mother is visiting in like an hour and a half, and my place is not ready. So it's like, so yes, but I will.
Is she bringing you air?
You're a grown ass man, you know that, right? Like she can come over to your house and you can just be like, yeah, screw you.
Okay.
No,
I would probably lose several teeth if I did that. The backhand would.
I think so. All of the people who are married, so it may just be Nate. Daniel, I don't actually know. Are you married? Okay,
No.
so Nate, you can back me up on this. What ends up happening is
only you two.
I wouldn't clean the house nearly as much for my mother as for my wife's mother.
Oh no.
If the mother-in-law is coming, I'm like steam cleaning the ceiling.
No.
That
For me,
shitty looking
it was-
vase she got me 5 years ago. I got to get some fresh
Yes,
flowers
exactly.
in it and put it
Yep,
central.
I'm changing all the sheets in the guest bedroom. I'm strategically putting out, that birthday card that she, sent me like 5 years ago. That's getting
from
tucked somewhere.
2007.
Man, that's 4D just sucking up their pips.
Hey, you're trying to win best son-in-law at all times. The challenge continues at all times.
I think Nathan's past that.
I don't suck up. I just don't. It's one of those things where if my in-laws or even when my mother would come around, if they had a problem with how something was set up or the mess that this house is in, I'd like to get it cleaner, but at the same time, that's not my problem. If you've got a problem with it, you don't have to show up.
I will admit that it's not actually as much about her as it is like I was raised by a Prussian mother, and like you don't invite guests over to your house unless it is like spotless. So like even like friends coming over for a barbecue, I still clean the shit out of everything and like hide all the trash and do all that stuff. And my wife is always just like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, which is why we don't have company over a whole lot. So.
Yes, that's exactly how it goes.
Whose house here looks more like Bag End? Where you don't want any visitors, no well-wishers, nobody except on party business, and there's maps everywhere. All right. And then whose is the opposite? Where it's basically when the dwarves burst in and they've got yeah, that's mine. Like, don't make a mess. What are you guys doing? Don't take that. I was saving
laundry in 4 different rooms in my house right now.
I do have the cushions here for acoustics, but
man, that's a mess, Dane.
Fuck you. No, it's not. It only looks like, dude, those books are all alphabetical. And they're all from the same edition, for crying out loud. I've got OCD up the wazoo. This is immaculate in here.
It's like that scene from the movie High Fidelity when he's organizing his CDs and his friend's like, "What are you doing? You organizing it alphabetical? No. By band? No. Chronological." Like, no fucking way.
There's a.
I could probably do that.
So
with those
off
books.
topic right now, but
all right.
There's a phenomenal scene in Bones of all shows where.
I don't believe you.
We're gonna have to audio clip that for the future reference, where he says that there's a phenomenal scene in Bones.
There is.
Isn't Bones the joke there? It's the longest running show that no one watches.
I've never seen an episode.
The scene is, they have the sort of down to earth instinctual FBI guy and the very smart, very autistic science girl. So they're looking for a piece of evidence in a DVD shelf, and she's getting very upset because it's not organized. And he goes basically right up to it and reaches out and like pulls out like 3 of them, and he's just like, and he opens all 3, and in the second one, there's the piece of evidence. She's like, "How did you do that?" And he said, "It's men organize things based on usage. So we know he's this tall. So, people like things in the middle. So all of his good stuff is at sort of eye/arm level right in the middle. So this is definitely the one that has like the porn that's an instinctive, or that's a clue to the investigation."
That makes sense.
I've always thought it was fascinating because a lot of my own stuff is organized sort of in that way, just with the I call it the
eye and arm level
stuff.
the hidden porn, yeah. But I forget what he called it, but the instinctive organizational method.
Fair enough.
Not familiar with this whatsoever. Okay.
Anyway,
all right. Back on topic.
Back
on topic, guys. Back on topic.
All right. We can blame Alex for this because he was cleaning while on stream.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Fair enough.
So Merry and Pippin steal the dragon fireworks. It's one of the first kind of big changes, right? So instead of it being planned and Gandalf doing his stuff, we start to see Merry and Pippin established as kind of the ne'er-do-well, the comic relief, kind of that sort of role. Which is maybe as good of a time as any to kind of talk about how we feel about that narrative change.
I don't like it. It's fun enough in the movie, but again, it's kind of putting this. It's not as bad, but it's like Matt Coffin and Wheel of Time being a thief. Like
No,
it's not.
No, they're being mischievous, but really they're
hard no. They're still good people. Like they didn't fun like he made them different good people, and they do honestly they do develop into characters in the second and third movie, right? So really, it's just a delay in their sort of personalities, and I think I said this in the chat that like this is a big ensemble cast. You kind of forget about it in the first half of the movie because it's a tighter cast list until you get to Rivendell, but it's a big ensemble cast, and whenever you have a big ensemble like that, differentiating the characters and giving them enough screen time to kind of grow into their own person and have an audience connection is really hard. I feel like having given them two distinct personalities. I mean, how many more minutes do you think would have really had to have been added to this first half of this movie to make them who they were in the books?
That's the problem. It can't be done because of the pacing. You need the pacing to move. There's so much story to tell, and this is theatrical cut.
Yeah.
That we're looking at the extended, but you can't have people in the theater that long.
And let's not forget that a lot of the chapters that they did cut, right? So Tom Bombadil, Old Forest, Barrow Downs, and the rest, those were also Merry and Pippin chapters, right? They were not cardboard cutouts for those chapters. They had things to do, and you knew that was getting taken out. So I could kind of see, all right, if you aren't going to have Gandalf barge into Bag End and draw them into the conspiracy that way, if you're going to do the coincidental, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And you're going to use them for the comic relief element, which in and of itself, I don't disagree with, right? You need to have kind of some lightheartedness in this because since you're not doing all the poems and you're not doing the other lighthearted kind of friendly,
good point,
charming elements of the books, the whimsy. How do you do it in a cinema? Well, you need somebody to be the funny one or the funny pair, right? And okay, that's going to be Merry and Pippin. I think of all of the choices that you could do, it's better to make them the comic relief than Sam or, God forbid, like Legolas and Gimli.
I totally
right?
I agree with you guys. This is just nitpicking, but you're right. I don't have a better solution. And I agree that Jackson has done it beautifully with them, making them fun.
I think Dane's point about
we should qualify kind of our criticisms of that is like, if we say, okay, this is different than how it was done, but if we don't have a better way of how it could be done and still pull it off, then you have to tip your hat and say, you guys did this the best that could be achieved. And honestly, I think they did. I agree with you, Daniel, about, okay, it's unfortunate that it had to be a coincidence. That's how Merry and Pippin got drawn into everything, and it would have been nice for the conspiracy. But at the same time, I don't think it would have been as good of a film if you added 30 minutes of this type of exposition. And at the end of the day, they get away with it, right? From a filmmaker's point of view, they achieve it. And I think this early scene here, which is new, right? Because Gandalf is the one who explodes all the fireworks. There's nothing about Merry and Pippin doing it. So you're giving them additional screen time here. They bite the apple. They have some good back and forth. You've got Pippin kind of being the more scared one and Merry being kind of the instigator. You gave them both personalities, and there's some real, like, it's charming. It's not Tolkien charming, but the film is charming because of it. Especially like when you see them kind of with the smoke and the burnt out hair doing their chores and washing the dishes after the fact.
Which is the thing I wanted to call out from your point, because we talked a lot about the back and forth tonal shifts that Tolkien wrote in the book, where you had light things to balance the darkness, and I think if we didn't have Merry and Pippin as the comic relief, I don't think that the movie would have accomplished that at all. right? It would have just been dark, 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 dark the whole way through.
Yep.
And so I think that maybe gets missed when we talk about this, that like, yeah, we're sad that we didn't get to see the conspiracy of the hobbits, right? We're sad that we didn't get to see the characters that Tolkien kind of wrote in that way. But it actually might help make the movie achieve Tolkien's narrative voice a little bit better, where it's not just dark. And maybe that's something that's overlooked when we talk about Merry and Pippin as characters, that we zoom in and we get this myopic focus on them as characters, and we don't consider what they do to the tone of the movie around them, and whether or not that's a positive thing, and B, a Tolkien thing, right? Like, it is, he was not the author that, he didn't write A Song of Ice and Fire. He wrote something that had charm and to use Alex's words, some whimsy, right?
That's
not my words. That's his words. But
well I mean,
one of the things that the film achieved,
Michael Scott,
with what was achieved with the film in terms of Pippin and Merry, was in the end they all hit their character arcs that Tolkien had in the books. Like, my biggest gripe about the character changes is by far and away Aragorn. He still hit his character arc in the book. He ended up who Tolkien wrote him to be by the end. And so I think that as long as you can make them comic relief to give you that bit of reprieve in these darker tones, while at the same time, as long as it's more excusable to do that if you keep the characters in their Tolkien shell. And I think that's why it works in the end. And so, like, the matter of convenience, as far as I'm thinking off the top of my head, I don't know that there's a matter of convenience the rest of the trilogy. And so it's not overused, and that we can be proven wrong. I could be proven wrong as we do these watches in the future, but as long as it's not overused, the convenience thing is something that is very excusable, I think, in how things kind of occur. Because if it keeps on happening, then it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, great. Here we go again.
It's one of those things. In order to establish a plot and set things up, you need to. Every story has some conveniences and some contrivances. And so long as you keep it within the first, if we're talking a movie, if you keep it within the first half hour, most people give you a pass on it just because we kind of understand that, we got to get this thing together. We got to get it moving. If there's going to be a sort of big dramatic story rather than, Dane goes to the gas station to pick up milk, there needs to be, Dane needs to meet a wizard. So there's probably going to be some convenience there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
And this passes the adaptation smell test.
I don't get my milk from the gas station. Fuck.
Gross. Yeah, he gets it in a bag like all good Canadians. My one piece of information about Canada.
we haven't had milk bags in years, man. Fuck off.
Since before COVID.
So what if I remember, like, you could buy an actual milk jug to fit the bag in, cut the corn.
I love that. I love it. Lyle
dairy industry in this country.
Here. Lyle, he's a good dude. I'll highlight this. Says he can't stay very long, but he thinks so. Jackson butchered Isildur's story in order to justify his version of Aragorn. So I will say, a little bit outside the scope. I think we're just kind of starting out the watch here, Lyle. So you'll have to stick with us as we go through the books and the later movies to see how we kind of fall out on that. But I don't know. We did see a little bit of Isildur, and we saw a little bit of Aragorn in this part of the movie. So what do you guys think? I mean, I feel like my biggest complaint about Aragorn that we see so far is probably just that he's not quite as threatening to the hobbits early on as he was in the book, right? they're much more suspicious. He's much more dangerous. There's the whole thing about him having followed them from the hedge as they came out from the sort of the Barrow Downs, right? So he's been on their trail for a while. They don't know where he's from. There's that whole thing with Gandalf's letter. And they don't trust him fully for a while. So there's that. And then Isildur like barely exists, if he exists at all, I think, in this part of the actual book, right? So that's an inject in the prologue. But
I think there's an issue, and I don't want to say an issue. There's a difference with the casting of Viggo Mortensen because he doesn't have, in the book, by my mind's eye, Aragorn is a much more weathered, stern, imposing figure, and Viggo Mortensen is a little more, nice to look at. He's
yep.
He's a little pretty.
He's too sexy to play book Aragorn.
He's
Like
pretty, yeah. And that's like again another stupid nitpick.
He looks fairer and feels fouler.
He looks too fair.
Okay. All right. Am I the outlier here? I don't think Viggo Mortensen is the best looking dude in the world.
I'm not saying I'm attracted to him.
I'm not. Okay, but if we're gonna be, I think who they had initially cast, the Stuart Townsend guy, who was 28 and was hunky and in like fucking I think he played Lestat in a fucking Aaliyah movie. That was his claim to fame. Whatever. They realized it wasn't working because he was action hero, and they said they cast the role too young. That's the only thing that Peter Jackson really says about this in the appendices. And they had to pull Viggo Mortensen in. So Viggo Mortensen, he grows a terrible beard. They gave him long, stringy hair in this, and he's got gaps in his teeth that aren't like. He does not have a Joe Biden, fake smile, kind of like the pearly whites across, and like, hey, I'm showing off my orthodontic work, kind of thing. Viggo Mortensen doesn't have that. What Viggo Mortensen has, let me do this in defense. If he ever watches this, Viggo Mortensen is an amazing actor. He is an amazing photographer. He is an amazing poet. He is what everybody in the appendices talks about him. He is the old school classy movie star who is basically the kindest, nicest gentleman out there. Yeah. And the fact that he could come in and play Eric, like his first day of shooting, I think, is this pipe scene in The Prancing Pony.
I think I'm going to point out that we are not qualified to make this conversation. So I'm going to say Kale is Viggo did fine. Trip, Viggo for the win. I think the women are saying, here, we also have Dempsey saying that his wife was on board. Because let's be honest here, men, this is an unpopular opinion these days, but men decide what is attractive in women, and women decide what is attractive in men. Yep. I know this is complicated stuff, ladies and gentlemen here, but no one on this panel can say whether or not Viggo Mortensen is an attractive man. We can just say whether or not we think women would find him attractive.
No, I can speak for my wife in terms of how she would sit there.
Okay, so now we're going way old school and controversial statements. Now, continue.
Right, exactly. I am ordering for her menu. Okay. No, in terms of Viggo Mortensen, what he doesn't come across as like this classicness and attractiveness, but what women like in their men is a very serious ruggedness, and that's definitely what Viggo Mortensen brought to the table in this movie. And I think that is what gets their things going.
I always thought the appeal was a man with a big sword, and so I thought that was what his appeal was in this movie.
Giggity.
I guess I think Dane is sort of right to an extent in the fact that if you look at a picture of Viggo Mortensen, you are very confused as to why you would be like, that is not a sex icon. But then they give him like a little bit of stubble, like the good wig, and then they pose him and photograph him right, and all of a sudden it's like, yep, that's a movie star. That is an A-lister. That is what that dude is supposed to look like.
Miss Dempsey is coming to correct the record.
Just pull up the chat.
See, no one on this panel knows what the answer is. We can only speculate. We need the women to come in here and tell us what's what.
So
I am
all I'm
comfortable
saying
in
out
my
of the
alpha
gate here is
masculinity to make a statement.
Viggo Mortensen in 2000. Okay, it's not Brad Pitt, right? They did not. And let's be honest here. If this is your leading man, what was his biggest credit prior to Lord of the Rings?
No idea.
I'm so glad that they did not have giant names in this movie, aside from Gandalf.
Elijah Wood was pretty big.
Was he really
as
that
a
big at the time?
as a child star? So this was his big transition to something else. Ian
Back
McKellen,
to
we
the
would have
Future
known
too.
from. Fuck off. Elijah Wood was every kid in the fucking 90s. Like,
No, I
Jesus,
know what you mean. I know what you're saying. I agree.
George
He
was
was
the
known.
war. Like was he in Jumanji too? He might have been in Jumanji. I don't know. But all I'm saying, so Viggo Mortensen, his biggest credit prior to Lord of the Rings was G.I. Jane. And he wasn't G.I. Jane, just so you guys, that was Demi Moore. He was the he was the Navy SEAL drill
the
sergeant.
lieutenant, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you gotta be careful. Will Smith's gonna come out here and slap you.
Why? Oh, now I get it.
That's good. That's good. That was good stuff. Okay.
We have fun here. But all right. But that's all I'm saying is Lord of the Rings made him a bigger star than what he was. He was not leading man material. It's not like, all right, here's Lord of the Rings, big action star, Brad Pitt as Aragorn kind of shit, or George Clooney as Boromir. Like they obviously they didn't do that. That wasn't what they were going for. I don't know how we got on this tangent, but all I had to say, Viggo Mortensen is not an ugly guy, but he's also not the best looking guy. That doesn't matter. He was fantastic for the role. And I thought he did a phenomenal job.
Yep.
I do have to bring this comment up again from Mrs. Dempsey, I suppose I should say, that despite what I said before, women can actually comment on the attractiveness of other women. I'm not really sure the physics of why that works out, but
No,
she's also correct.
It's another unfairness of life. Women get to wear men's clothing. They also could comment on other women. They get all the privilege.
Yeah.
It's all about my vagina.
That's okay. People might occasionally watch you play sports, so it's all good.
Oh, okay. Prancing Pony, though, right? Let's talk about how good looking that sign was with the Prancing Pony on it.
Yes, that was
Very
so
good.
great.
It wasn't even the
Very
best sign
sudden.
in the movie. The
Was it
no
the Green
admittance
Dragon?
except on official party business is clearly the best sign.
Yeah, that's
With
true. That was a good one.
the nails just perfectly aligned at all four corners.
Yep.
And
The
the strategic
calligraphy.
rips. And true enough.
But yeah, I thought everything about the Prancing Pony and Bree was pretty solid. Obviously, the change from the book was they got rid of the other conspiracy, right? They got rid of the conspiracy of kind of the Bree folk, right? So there was a few of them. There was people up from the south, the Southerners, right, who had come into town, and you have Bill Ferny, the local sort of the local troublemaker, and they are in league with the Black Riders. We don't necessarily know. It's probably that they don't know who the Black Riders are. That just accepting some money on the side. They're not servants of the Dark Lord. They're just convenient, sort of, we'll say, useful idiots, right? But that goes away completely, and instead the Dark Riders come bodily into the town of Bree, and we have that really honestly great scene. And I guess they cut Gandalf's letter. So those are the two changes in Bree. Would you guys agree?
A big change there because we lose Bill Ferny. We lose the scene where is it Merry or was it Pippin who wanders off and one of the Black Riders breeds
Merry.
Is it Merry?
Mary's the missing one.
He's the missing one, and he has the
which that happens kind of off camera in the book.
It's off camera, but it's still a big deal. It's the Black Breath, is it called?
Yeah.
And we lose. That's a big event, and the letter, and that's another big deal. So, but like you, Pips, I love the change. I love seeing the ring wraiths come into the room and stab, because I commented during the chat or during the watch that this gives us a physical example of their actions and how they serve Sauron, because other than chasing people until the end of our story, book 3, we don't really see them fighting or doing much more than chasing. So having them come into the room and stab the beds and assassinate our entire crew, it's terrifying and it's awesome, and it shows that these are creatures of action. They have swords, they have armor for a reason. They're not just lurking about in shadows, watching and following.
Oh, and
especially because we don't have the Fatty Bulger scene.
Yeah. But what I recall the best from this is when I saw the little beds and the wraiths walking past
Jacob's
them.
got it.
No, he doesn't. With the little beds and the big kind of wraiths walking by, I was immediately tying back to, we've got some nice Hobbit-sized rooms for you, right? So it just tied that back, being like, oh, shit, this is Prancing Pony, and I'm seeing all the hobbits, and it's all close-ups and whatnot. And then the reveal, like, okay, it's an easy one, but all right, they went to the next inn over, because I knew these characters weren't going to die, but I still love it because it's a classic horror cinema type of thing where you're trying to mislead the audience, but I forgave it. The tension was great. And I still think like the scene has been done, but oh shit, we lost Pips. This stream might end in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, unless if he comes back.
Or not.
Yeah, let's keep
We're
going.
still alive,
We're still
so-
crashes.
Oh,
I love the floating that he does with them too. It's such a cool effect. My gosh, it is creepy, and yet another little thing that adds. He all these little details just add so much. Like I always notice when you see the shot under the bed of their shoes, and you see the armor, and it's the sabatons. Those are called. Yep. They're done just like medieval armor would look, and it's just beautiful. The craft work. Everyone knows the armorers and everything that worked on these movies just did phenomenal.
Unreal.
John Howe, if I recall correctly, one of the two artistic leads, right? Because they went out and got the two most renowned Tolkien artists, and John Howe and Alan Lee. But John Howe is a medieval enthusiast and recreationist, and he kind of knew all the armor stuff. And when they were trying to design stuff that was maybe outside of historical, like, I want this armor with this feature on it, he'd be like, that's impractical. That's not how it would work. And if you tried to add something like that onto armor, this is the problem that you would get. So, I mean, they brought in the best people, and it shows on screen.
Right? Imagine bringing in the experts on the subject matter as opposed to bringing in... Dane, how would you describe Masara?
I think she might have read The Wheel of Time as much as I have, but she's unemployed, and therefore this was like her one job. Like, what are her other skill sets, right? Because my thing is, if I was to be the lore expert on a thing like Wheel of Time from Amazon, like, I would have shot everything in the bud. But at the same time, I've got other competencies, right? I don't need to make a living doing this. So I don't really get...
Yeah, it's the difference between bringing in a world-renowned artist versus a stay-at-home mom. And not to disparage stay-at-home moms, but when you're talking about a artistic production, it probably benefits you to have a renowned artist working on it. So
not only that, but someone that's kind of like anal about the staying true to the canon and the quality and all that. Kind of, you hear the stories of Gene Roddenberry and the way he was a pain in the butt to work with. But yeah, that's what keeps everything.
Robert
accurate.
Jordan was too.
Exactly.
Robert Jordan was a huge pain in the ass to work with for all of the other creatives that
the comic book the graphic novel, like that's the story, right? He's the biggest pain in the butt, but that's why you can use the graphic novel as a Bible, essentially, because you know everything in there is 100% accurate to what he wanted you to be portrayed.
And this is where I just lose my shit over Massar is basically like, all right, if your one claim to fame is that you're the mega fan and you've read these series so much and this is why you're known or why a corner of the internet knows who you are, and then you get a job and then you proceed to do nothing with it. Because even if she claims like, oh, I caught this and I flagged that and they just ignored me. It's like, what type of production ignores their lore expert, right? John Howe said that thing on the elbow of your armor, while it looks cool, is stupid. And guess what? Peter Jackson listened to him.
And it's often not just about, oh, they ignored me, but did you make yourself a big enough pain in the butt? Because like Henry Cavill, apparently that was another complaint about him in The Witcher. He just wouldn't shut up about, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Fine,
Right.
do it his way. Like,
yeah, well, and that's to Peter Jackson's
Credit. Yep, 100%.
credit there, because he sits there and he says, okay, well, I'm the director of production guy, I'm in charge of this whole thing, but I understand a lot less than John Howe knows about all this stuff. So here's John Howe, and he has the authority over all this. It's, and whatever he says, I'm going to agree with. So if you come to him with something stupid, he's got the authority to say no. And so he properly delegates these pieces of authority to where they need to go